The United Nations has criticised New Zealand for failing to set maximum working hours in its workplace health and safety laws. It says New Zealand is falling short of requirements to protect the right of workers to rest. Now, Professor Philippa Gander is a fatigue expert from Massey University, and she says the UN's approach is outdated, and she joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning, Simon.
What has the UN got wrong here?
I don't know that it's necessarily got it wrong, but this is a traditional regulatory approach which is trying to manage fatigue by saying they'll have limits on the number of hours you can work in a day, and then the effects of cumulative fatigue across a work week will limit the number of hours of work you can do in a week. The idea being that you give people sufficient time for recovery, which actually means getting good quality sleep, and also that you give them sufficient time for life away from work, so work-life balance. In New Zealand, we have an approach which has been around for about 30 years now, and we actually try and manage those same issues in a different way in our performance-based occupational health and safety legislation. So in our Health and Safety and Employment Act, fatigue is a workplace hazard. It's identified as a workplace hazard, and it can cause harm to employees and people in the workplace. So that puts a responsibility on employers to have safe systems of work, to identify fatigue where it's happening, and to manage the risks associated with it. And it puts responsibilities on employees to use their time away from work to get adequate recovery, sleep, etc., etc. That performance-based approach has a lot going for it in principle. The devil is in the detail of the implementation, so it requires that then the regulator takes on a different role, in our case the Department of Labour, has to be adequately resourced to provide education to industry.
Is it doing a good enough job?
In my view, I don't think they've ever had the resourcing to do it well enough. They also are required to help develop codes of practice for industry, and they have to have a suitably educated and resourced enforcement agency, because it changes what you need to do to go into a workplace to decide whether things are being done safely or not.
I guess the key question is, compared to other countries, do New Zealand workers work too many hours?
I'd rather turn it around and say I think we need to look at what we've got and say, in my view, if we had the level of resourcing, which we're not going to get in the current economic and political climate, what we've got would work as an alternative. So I think we should actually possibly be looking at a hybrid approach, and maybe we should be thinking about having prescriptive hours of limiting work hours, but having the opportunity for employers to go in with a performance-based approach for managing the same issues if they can do it. And we already do this in our trucking industry and in the aviation industry. The industries have to operate under prescriptive rules, but companies can go to the regulator and develop a fatigue risk management system, we call it, where they will have a different way of managing that hazard in their workplace in collaboration with workforce, and then the regulator has to decide whether that's good enough and accredit it, and they have to monitor it. So I think we might be better off with a hybrid approach.
So does that mean, just quickly, does that mean you think fatigue remains an important problem here?
It certainly does, yes. We've got plenty of evidence to that effect.
All right, thank you very much for that. It's Professor Philippa Gander from Massey University.